Hello to all of you out there. It is a wonderful day in Prairie Town. And, oh, of course, let me introduce myself. My name is Charles Coleman. I know some of you were just talking things over with my wonderful wife, Serafina, just very recently. And for those of you who happened to be talking with us earlier, you know that my wife and myself and our two children, we are a fine family of actors. Originally, we had planned to be just in Prairie Town for just a little bit. But wouldn't you know it, we had ourselves well, our little play that we had was quite well celebrated, in fact, especially with Mr. Whitaker helping out. Wouldn't you know it? As soon as Mr. Whitaker started adding a couple of incentives for people to come and see our play, only 25 cents, I believe. Well, we've decided to stay in town a little bit longer. So, without further ado, if anyone has any questions whatsoever, I would be more than happy to talk with any of you. And I have a special treat for anyone who is here today. I have a fine book of acting. So for anyone who has any questions or would like to learn a few lessons, I would be more than happy to teach you. And so, while we're waiting for folks to join us, and of course, if any of you have any would like to say anything, by all means, I am all ears. We shall begin with a few acting lessons. Let's see here. There are, of course, 10 wonderful dramatic passions. I'm trying to think now. I've been acting for quite a long time, and there was a work that I found very, very influential. There's a gentleman by the name of Aaron Hill, who wrote quite some time ago about these 10 dramatic passions that will turn you into a more dramatic and wonderful actor. Indeed, these emotions are scorn, love, jealousy, hatred, wonder, grief, anger, etc. Mrs. Carter, well, a good afternoon to you too, madam. Now, I will have you know that we are expecting to have another play later tonight, and I do so hope that you will be there to join us. Oh, my favorite play. Let's see. Well, it's taken some time, and I think I've just now talked my wife into allowing us to perform my favorite of Shakespeare's plays, and that is Macbeth. Oh, I get chills even thinking about it. I mean, it has quite a few things that everyone's looking for in a play. It has witches and murder and ghosts and all sorts of things. So we'll be doing a bit of reading from this play called Macbeth later tonight. I do so hope some of you can join us. I've tried to fine-tune some of my acting later. Now, of course, not to say that he's better than me, but if perhaps some of you have read some acting reviews of fine actors such as Edwin Forrest, and I know actors like him are practicing on acting by displaying their muscles and showing physical bravado. And, well, I've decided to incorporate some of that into our production tonight. Why, Macbeth is one of your favorites too? I am so glad to hear that. Now, I will have you folks know, in case any of you missed our last performance last time, let's see, we struck in a bit of a partnership with Mr. Whitaker. For those of you who are joining us, Mr. Whitaker and I have noticed that when some libations or drinks or spirits, as you will, are offered during these festive occasions, well, we did have quite a turnout in Prairie Town, and so we have decided to extend our stay. Let's see, how long have we been married? Oh, my wife, Serafina, and I. I'm afraid she can't join you at the moment. She's out getting ready for rehearsing for tonight. Let's see now. We've been married. Oh, it's gone by very fast. It's been about 10 years already. My goodness. A whole decade. That is something. Oh, and of course our two children. I do hope they scamper along here sometime soon. Uh, our youngest is 5, and our son is 9 years old already. My, how the time flies. For those of you who remember talking to my wife, Serafina, I believe she talked with many of you about a week or so ago. She is a wonderful woman, and we have had a wonderful marriage so far. Granted, we have our disagreements about which plays to perform or which direction to take on the way to Chicago. But we get along quite well. Who is the better actor, myself or my wife? An excellent question. Let me... oh, Serafina! Are you around in hearing distance? Just in case she can hear me, I'm going to say that my wife is absolutely the better actor is Serafina. Actually, if you see her later today, do tell her that I said that. You wonderful people, you. Let's see. Will our children be in the performance tonight? Of course. We will be performing selections of Macbeth. Now, granted, since our children are so young, we had to vary things a little bit, of course. We decided that they would be assisting some of the other characters in the play. Of course, when the witches have their brew and so on. It will be most delightful, I will let you know. And in preparation for the performance tonight, as I promised, we do have this fine book of acting that I have contributed to. Now, for those of you joining us, we have 10 wonderful dramatic passions. Now the question, do you ask for directions when you travel, or just assume you know how to get where you are going? Well, my wonderful, dear, adoring wife, she is very readily able to ask questions at a moment's notice. I, on the other hand, have studied, significantly so, some of the roads here and there. Now, granted, we've done a lot of walking, but there's, of course, the National Road, and there's canals that we take on some occasions. One time recently, about a month ago, we started going south to the southern part of Indiana instead of up north, and that may have possibly been because of me. But, an excellent question. Let's see. Now, I will, of course, have to rehearse myself for tonight when we perform Macbeth. Now, we do also offer acting lessons here in the fine town of Prairie Town. Some of the children that we have been teaching how to act, well, they are wonderful, spirited little children. However, some of them have, their hearts are absolutely in the right place. However, they still have much to learn. Some of the children tend to be very subtle with their acting, and in my opinion, an actor must not be subtle. Why, one must display the emotions. One must let out the very emotions of the heart so that all the people around can see. In fact, as you can see from these wonderful illustrations, this one, for example, is the emotion for fear and horror. Look at that, not subtle at all. And that is precisely what we want to see out of an actor. In fact, I will give you, fine folks, for free, an acting demonstration. Now, to properly portray the emotion of fear, as I'm about to do tonight, behold, there are acting instructions, as I will read, and if some of you would like to try along as I do so, by all means, feel free. Fear, we must define fear. By muscles and look both languid with an alarm. In the eye. Yes, in the eye, that's what it says. In the eye and motion, so you must watch to make sure that my eyes are not subtle. They must have alarm in my eye. To continue. Fear opens the eyes and the mouth very wide, draws down the eyebrows, draws back the elbow parallel with the sides, lifts up the open hand to the height of the chest, so that the palms face the dreadful object, as shields opposed against it. One foot is drawn back against the other, so that the body seems shrinking from danger. The whole body is thrown into a general tremor. And wouldn't you know, to this very page, he is quoting Macbeth for this very portion. I will demonstrate. Hence, horrible shadow, unreal mockery, hence! I thank you. Oh, as you see, it takes so much dedication and time and talent to be an actor such as myself. Now, let's see. Oh, I see I have a few more comments here. What is my favorite role that I have played? Well, tonight, of course, when I play the Scottish King himself. One thing I would like to play. I believe I mentioned that famous actor, Edwin Forrest, earlier. I must admit, ever so slightly, I might be jealous. Actually, is that an emotion that's in here? Yeah. Ha! It is. Well, I'll spare you the lesson for now, but I must admit I am somewhat jealous of some of the fine actors on the coast who are able to have playwrights write plays specifically for them. And Mr. Forrest, as I mentioned, he focuses on his muscles, his physical presence when he portrays someone. And he's right. I believe he's still playing it. Just a few years ago, the latest sensation that is playing, I believe it's playing in New York right now, is a play called The Gladiator. And this actor, Edwin Forrest, he is playing, I believe, a historical part, a fellow by the name of Spartacus. Ah, my word. Now, I must say I am somewhat jealous of playing a gladiator in combat like that. Why, I've heard some reviews that for a big play like that, reviewers and audiences were especially taken by the end of, I believe, the second act, just as the Spartacus is about to rebel. And the curtain closes just as the rebellion gladiators and the oppressive Romans come together. It is the latest thing. Now, there is, while I'm talking on the subject, there is some discussion. You see, Spartacus is, of course, a slave who rebels against his oppressive captors. And so, I do not know whether the playwright is an abolitionist or not, but it has captured the imagination. And I believe plays of that sort will be coming around. More questions. You were very frightened from my acting? Oh, Mrs. Carter had goosebumps. Oh, my word. Now, it is quite all right. I will assure all of you that I am an actor, and I was not actually afraid of something, and neither shall you. But, of course, if you'd like to experience such fine emotions again, we're having the play later tonight. I believe, if I remember our arrangements correctly, we've even settled a matter where we'll be performing once again at the Golden Eagle, so please come and join us. And an excellent question, were my parents actors? Not quite, no. However, let me mention by saying that I grew up in Philadelphia, and there is a theater there. It is by golly, I was very lucky when I was growing up. I was born almost 36 years now, and when I was very young, there was a theater that began in Philadelphia, somewhere on there's a street called Walnut Street, and the theater came up, and it was, so far as I'm aware, one of the very first theaters in this country. And there I was, a youth, being able to see the beginning of this great movement. My parents took me to see one of the plays. I can't even remember what it was at the moment, but the emotion that I felt watching this play, it, well, it clearly struck a chord with me, and ever since I attended some of the plays there on the street at the Walnut Street, I had a fascination ever since. I did some acting at that very theater before I started to move around a bit. Let's see, we have some other questions here. Yes, Miss Krogmeyer here. Do you prefer to act on a stage in theater or on the road like you were doing in Prairie Town? Excellent question. There are many things I miss, of course, about performing in a large stage. I don't exactly have a large proscenium with me. I certainly don't have a cast of hundreds with me. And that I do miss. I will be very frank and honest. I do miss the fact that, my wife and I do have some wonderful clothing that we like to wear for our performances, but in some of the repertory theaters that I used to take part of, you'd have maybe more elaborate costumes, but certainly more elaborate sets. That much I certainly miss. Acting in Prairie Town is a very different matter. And of course, when it comes to our acting troupe, which 4 members has myself and my wife, and well, that's all so far, unless any of you folks would like to join us on the way to Chicago. Of course, that is a very different nature. Instead of performing in a large theater, we're performing in maybe local taverns or the inns here and there. But that's all right. Although, to answer your question, I do ramble. Hopefully I'm rambling theatrically. To answer your question, I think overall, I do prefer acting in the large stage. I'm hoping that once my wife and I settle in Chicago, eventually, who knows, maybe we can make our own theater. But on the other hand, there is a certain charm with being so close with the audiences, people like yourselves and myself. And I feel the connection that we have, relying on merely my passionate acting and everyone's use of imagination. Well, I think that is quite a powerful thing indeed. Yes, Mrs. Carter, will I perform in Prairie Town later this summer? That is an excellent question. Well, to be perfectly honest, we anticipated not even staying in Prairie Town this long. But due to the success that we have had so far, and possibly with the fact that we maybe owe the Golden Eagle Inn a slight bit of money, we have decided to extend our stay in Prairie Town. We have not decided yet on whether we're still staying in Prairie Town or if we'll need to leave. But if we've been seeing the success that we have been seeing so far, I'd like to hope so. I'd like to. I would hope. Maybe so. If folks like yourselves would like to see the Colemans, by golly, who knows? Maybe we'll extend our stay even a little bit longer. And as I've been here, I must say, I've been getting along with some of the folks here in this Prairie Town. It is a nice place, I must say. I think my impression of Prairie Town has lightened up quite a bit since I've been here. Why, I have even discovered that the people in this Prairie Town, apparently, they are quite fascinated by literature and books, and of course with my plays as well, too, some of them. But apparently there are many folks in Prairie Town who like to meet together and discuss the fine works of literature. If we were to stay later this summer, I have heard that some of the people in Prairie Town are currently reading Frankenstein, and that they may hold a little bit of a a bit of a gathering to discuss the literary merits of that book, Frankenstein. And I must admit, that is one of my favorite books. So, who knows, perhaps that's one other reason why we should stay in Prairie Town just a little bit longer. Let's see. How much will it be? It'll be, I believe 12. Let's see. Oh, of course. I believe we will have, let's see, how much is our play tonight? Well, I believe 25 cents. Now, keep in mind, this is fine quality acting that you will be seeing tonight, of course. How many plays do we act in 1 year? An excellent question. Well, that can certainly vary, and especially it will vary now. Now that we're traveling on the road, so to speak, to Chicago. What we decide to put on largely depends on the people that we visit, the towns that we visit. Many folks that we've visited are, just like my wife, a little more in favor of the comedies and happy things. So we've been doing a lot of that. I'm trying to remember. I can't actually remember just about how many plays we might do a year. When we do perform in taverns and so on, as I said, it's not a large proscenium. We do things our own way. So we don't always, it's a little more informal, so to speak. Sometimes we throw in singing, for example, songs and some such. So it can get a little more fluid, so to speak. Frankenstein should be adapted for the stage. I absolutely agree. And that is something I would love to see. Who knows? I've not been part of any production. I wouldn't be surprised if there are folks in this country who have put on a production. But I would certainly love to see that. After all, and I don't know how many of you folks have read the fine book. It is glorious. I suppose we can add that to one of my dream roles that I would love to play, is the role of the creature created from Dr. Frankenstein. After all, I remember quite vividly in the book, the creature is quite eloquent. He is a sad creature, a piteous fellow, and yet quite literate. He goes on for at least 50 pages going on about his sad circumstances. And so we'll see what the future brings. More questions. Let's see here. Oh. Have any of the residents in town given your wife a hard time for being an actor? I've heard that some of the ladies, perhaps Mrs. Campbell, does not agree on ladies being actors. Yes, which is a very curious thing, and I'm glad you brought that up. After all, Dr. Campbell, well, one of the reasons why we are even here in Prairie Town are because of people like Dr. Campbell who are attempting to add culture and refinement to a town like Prairie Town. And, well, Mrs. Campbell, she does have her very strong opinions, I suppose. I haven't quite had the courage yet to point out when it comes to women being actors. Now, granted, we perform a lot of Shakespeare. And in Shakespeare's time, certainly all the men were the actors. But it really wasn't too long after Shakespeare where already women were starting to become acting on the stage. It's been, I'd like to say, at this point, it's probably been somewhere around 200 years, 2 centuries, where women have been on the stage. Now, granted, in some areas, maybe not as perhaps you won't, throughout history, you haven't seen as many women on stage as you might have in other areas or other locations or things like that. But the concept of a woman being a character on stage, at this point, it's been around for quite a while. So I do so hope that Mrs. Campbell comes around and sees things our way. Do we have to sew our own costumes? An excellent question. Well, Well, unfortunately, since we are not currently part of a repertory theater, we do have our fine clothes right here, of course. But we have only these fine clothes that we're taking with us on the way to Chicago. So, yes, in the meanwhile, for whenever that occurs, if there's any rips or things, yes, we will do the sewing ourselves. And my dear wife is wonderful at doing such glorious activities. In fact, to help with the finances a little bit while we're here in Prairie Town, I've actually been assisting Mr. Whitaker at his store with some of the items here and there, including things to help sew, and that has really helped our stay here in Prairie Town. Another question from Sarah Lynn Koss. What part of your profession do you find to be unpleasant? Well, that's an excellent question. Of course, for an actor, sometimes it takes me just a little bit to memorize plays. It can take quite some time, after all. But even more than that, the fact that not everyone agrees with my profession can be sometimes frustrating. My wife came from, I believe she was born in Richmond, Virginia. And when she was very young, now this happened, when I was very young too, when I heard about it. This must have been a couple decades ago, probably around 1811, 1812, somewhere around there. I believe there was a theater that burned and caught down. It was burned in Virginia. I don't think there was any foul play or anything, but unfortunately, when good folks, mind you, heard that there was a theater that had burned down, why, there were many folks who said, why, surely this must be an act from God, saying that this immoral activity of actors, well, surely this must be a divine punishment to show the people the way that they should not be actors at all. And I have heard, in fact, there are some folks in town. I believe they're called the Curtis family, and there's a Mr. Fenton, I believe is his name. There was a Mr. Fenton who was a little more than happy to share with me some sermons held in this country about the low moral quality of acting. I forget the name, but there was one preacher who said that acting was the cause of all evils. Apparently every single one. And Mr. Fenton was very happy to share this opinion with me. So those are things that, even though I have been acting for quite some time, it still takes some getting used to, I must say. And another question, these are, what a wonderful questions and conversations I am having with all of you. Let's see here. Do you think you will like living in Chicago? I certainly hope so. I'm very curious to see what it will be like when we get there. Now, I've heard it's maybe not too much there. Maybe there's a swamp or something in the location. But I have heard that the people who are there are very spirited in forming a community, starting a community, starting a place to live. And for those of you who were with my wife last week, she shared my opinion that for actors such as ourselves, well, competition for being an actor when you're further east can be very, very difficult. The reason why we're even going to a place in the middle of nowhere like Chicago is because there were actors. I won't say that they were, there were actors who very easily were taking over quite a few of the roles, let's say. As a repertory theater, for anyone who's taking part in a repertory theater, oftentimes you're selected to play a certain part. Mr. Forrest or Mr. Keene or some of those other fine actors. They may have their pick of the litter. They could be the big heroic characters or what have you. And I had often been selected to be the servant, and not a very talkative servant at that. So, whatever we do find in Chicago, I do so hope that it is. Well, I just do so hope it will not stifle our creativity. Do my wife and I have children? Yes, 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 absolutely yes. We do have my son Porter. He's 9 years old, and we have my daughter Carolina. She's 5 years old, and my daughter's her day of birth that we celebrate. It is in the winter, and I remember it before we came here to Indiana. Last winter, we were in Cincinnati, and we acted one of the repertory theaters there. And I just remember it was just a glorious day. We had just a splendid time. Is when you having my little girl turn 5 years old in the middle of this wonderful winter. And in Cincinnati, it is beautiful. And Indiana is beautiful too, but Cincinnati, there's such wonderful hills. When it comes to that time of year, seeing the sun peek out over the hills, well, I'm just happy to say that I've been blessed with such wonderful children and with a wonderful wife. Do my children want to be actors as well? Well, I certainly hope so. I suppose they're a bit young to decide for certain. However, our eldest, our son, we've already had him. We had him play a fairy in Midsummer Night's Dream, and we're looking forward to for tonight's performance. Or he won't be speaking much tonight, but he'll be appearing. And I think for my children, I know they are very happy whenever they take part, whether it's in a big way or a small way. So these are excellent questions. And for those of you who are joining us, I know a few of you joined after I introduced this fine book of acting. Now, a little bit about, there are more than one books of acting here or there. There are some books that may have borrowed the words, in fact, word for word, of how to act from older books. And so this book I have right here, I believe much of it was inspired by actors such as Aaron Hill on the art of acting. But did I say that acting books are borrow words? Oh, no. Did I say that? No. This book in particular, I didn't borrow any words whatsoever. Merely inspired by things. Now, I will let you know, let me know, if any of you would like to learn how to act an emotion. There are 10 dramatic passions, 10 emotions, and from which you can get any of the other emotions. You can take the basics and then mix and match. We have love, and we have scorn, and we have pity, and we have jealousy. That's the one I was talking about earlier. And we do have hatred, and we do have wonder. We also have, yes, grief, and anger, and joy, and fear. And so these are all fine qualities, fine emotions that I'd be happy to teach any of you. We are teaching the fine art of acting, and if any of you out there would like to join us on our way to Chicago, our acting troupe could use more actors. Now, just think of it. A life of eventual fame and possibly fortune. Yes, indeed. Be free-spirited folk like ourselves. The wonderfully acting family of Colemans We're still working on the name, of course. Well, who knows if any of you decide to join our acting troupe, we'll even have you have a little bit of say in what we should name ourselves. Yes, the Curious Collection of Acting Colemans. Yes, that may do. Yes, another question from Mrs. Mortel. What is my favorite type of play to perform? Drama? Comedy? Well, I'd prefer a good drama myself. Now, my wife, she prefers things that end quite happily. It was just last year we were performing King Lear, which, as we all know, it's very popular to have that with a happy ending. I know Mr. Shakespeare, he created a sort of a sad ending for that, but good luck trying that tragic version of King Lear to audiences. Oh, even an actor as fine as Edmund King. It was a little over a decade ago. He tried to bring back the tragic ending version of King Lear where everyone died. Performances like that, even for fine actors like that, aren't always so popular. Of course, my personal preference is for as much murder and witches and so on as perfectly possible, and tragedies too. But I also understand that's not what's popular these days. We'll see where the future brings. But many people these days, and certainly in Prairie Town, at least from the folks I've talked to, they are quite interested in in comedies and things that end happily. Which, of course, they do like that Frankenstein, and that doesn't exactly have a happy ending. So, in other words, we'll see which way the wind blows when it comes to these genres. But my personal favorite is going for the full dramatic potential. How would you show your audience scorn? An excellent question. Well, I shall just have to bring out this fine book of acting, and I will, out of the kindness of my heart, I will even offer this acting lesson for free. For now. Yes. Scorn. Scorn is negligent anger. Scorn. The eyes squint upon the object of displeasure. The neck is stretched out. The head forward, often nodding. The right arm frequently thrown out and menacing, with the eyes alternatively staring and rolling. So, for those of you who want to practice this yourselves, you need to work on those eyes rolling as you really get into the emotion of it. And the quotation is something from, I believe, As You Like It. Now I do frown on thee with all my heart. Thank you. And that is scorn. Yes, indeed. So for those of you who are trying it yourselves, remember, arch your neck back. You may need to roll the eyes, and don't be subtle with your emotions. Can't have that. Heaven's sake. Point that arm out. Make sure it is pointing at the object of displeasure. Maybe it's a person. In this context, it is a scorned lover, after all. And you must say those words with passion. Now I do frown on thee with all my heart. And might be even good to have a frown. We don't want the audience to not get the emotion, after all. Huzzah! Why, thank you. I do so hope that some of you join us for our performance tonight. The wonderful play of Macbeth. Excellent. These are wonderful questions I've been having with all of you. These are excellent questions. So, now, we do enjoy a good bit of Shakespeare. We're hoping to... we've mostly been performing Shakespeare here and there. Hopefully one of these days we'll get back. There are many modern plays that people are writing. The Gladiator, as I mentioned. Now that I would love to star in one day, or something like it. But we shall see. The School for Scandal, we've I know we've done that a few times. There are quite a few good plays here and there. And as I said, for those of you who want to join us later tonight, I believe it will be at the Golden Eagle Inn. It will be a wonderful time for a performance. The weather is nice and ripe. Feel free to join us. We'll be all ready for having a good time. All right. Well, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And but if you need a moment to take in the fine acting lesson I just taught you, well, that's quite all right too. I will once again, if anyone is curious, give out the fine 10 dramatic passions. There are fear, and joy, and anger, and grief, and wonder, and hatred, and jealousy, and pity, and scorn, and love. Now, let's see, I do need to get on to rehearsing sometime soon for our performance tonight. I do believe I remember most of the words of Macbeth. Let me think now. Tomorrow, and tomorrow, and... tomorrow. Yes, I think I'll be fine for tonight. I think I remember most of the lines. Now, let me give you a fine preview of that fine acting. Tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow creeps from this petty pace. I don't forget it. I don't forget my lines. This is what we refer to as a dramatic pause. From day to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, brief candle, life is but a walking shadow. A poor player struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. That's a line, right? Signifying nothing. Signifying... Ah, yes. Signifying nothing. Very well done. Oh, well, thank you so much. Am I liking the accommodations of the inn? I certainly am. Now, that is the Golden Eagle Inn that we are staying at. My family and I, we were initially staying at one of the very fancy rooms, after all. However, we couldn't exactly afford that room all the time, so we've we're still staying at the inn, but we've just changed rooms, so to speak. I do highly recommend staying at the Golden Eagle Inn. It's 25 cents a meal per person, so for my family, of course, that's $1 a meal, but boy, is it worth it. And I really must find out what sort of tea they have for me. Ah, yes. Just this morning they gave me some tea, and I'm not sure what it was, but it was wonderful. So for now, I do quite enjoy staying at the Golden Eagle Inn. In fact, some of the inn, for those of you who don't know, is run by a family called the Zimmerman family. And there are a couple of boys that they have in the family who seem to be quite interested in our acting lessons. Another question. What is my favorite performance I've ever done? Let me see here, Well, that, of course, will be tonight! Because tonight will be my finest performance. That is to say, it's not the only time that I've played Macbeth. Now, granted, I've never had the opportunity to play Macbeth at one of the repertory theaters. I was usually one of the lesser characters, but nonetheless, it is my favorite to perform. And I do so enjoy it so much, and I do so enjoy, you folks, you simply must see my wife, Seraphina Coleman, as Lady Macbeth. She is brilliant, let me tell you. She's rehearsing right now. She seems to be Are you washing your hands again? Oh, my goodness, my goodness. For some reason, she keeps washing her hands over and over again. I'm not entirely certain why. Oh, well. Maybe that's to help her get into the role, so to speak, I suppose. Well, it shall be a wonderful time later tonight when we do have this performance, when we do have this play. And it has been a wonderful conversation I've been having with some of you folks. I'm not entirely certain if you folks also live in Prairie Town or if you're like us and you're visiting. But nonetheless, if you are visiting, I do so hope you are enjoying your visit as much as we are. There are some parts of the town. Well, to set aside acting for a moment, but my youngest children, of course, we're a family who travel quite a bit. We've been traveling for quite some time now, and so our children haven't had much formal schooling so far, but oh boy, they're very interested in looking and seeing how the education is done in the school in Prairie Town. Very interesting indeed. Are there any plays in which I play multiple roles? And wonderful question. Yes, and for as long as the wonderful, fascinating, glorious actor of Coleman comedy acting troupe, as long as we're performing, considering we have the two members, yes, we tend to play more than one role sometimes. And not only that, and it does make things quite interesting as an actor when that occurs. But not only that, as I said, there will be some singing tonight as well. There are some good songs. I like singing a round of Old Lang Syne. That's what some of the people, when we performed last in the Golden Eagle, that's what some of the people wanted to hear us sing. And so we sang it. I don't think my wife, I don't think she's around anymore. Of course, one of my favorite songs is I wish I were single again. I wish I were single again. I wish I were single, my money would jingle. I wish I were single again. Again, again, again. Oh. That was not my wife. Nonetheless, I think I should stop singing that song. I was only interested in the literary qualities of the songs that I know, of course. But in any case, if you folks have any songs that you would like us to sing at tonight's performance, well, we'll see if we can give it a try, and hopefully we can have it go along in tandem with the theme of Macbeth. So we shall see. And I must say, my children, as I've been saying, they have enjoyed our stay in Prairie Town so far. It is a lovely little town, I must say. They certainly love the trees. Now, you don't have the grand hills of Cincinnati. My children really enjoyed that during the winter time. Nonetheless, there is a nice quiet beauty to a place like Prairie Town. And so I think we will be staying for quite a bit. We shall see. Now, of course, once we get to Chicago, well, I do so hope that our family finds a prominent place. There won't be so much competition of actors, and so I hope we can form our own company. I do so hope there's some playwrights out there. I've never tried my own hand at playwriting. I always dreamed that I'd be like one of those big dramatic actors, like Edmund Kean or Edwin Forrest or Junius Booth. Those are all fine actors, and so for many of them, there are playwrights that write plays specifically for them to be the lead role. Yes, and from Mrs. Karen, you should visit Indianapolis. It is very nice. You know, we'll take that into consideration. Initially, my wife and I had decided that we might not visit Indianapolis. I'm sure it's a fine city, of course, but we weren't entirely certain with a larger city like that whether to be competition for people's entertainment, or perhaps it would be the somewhat common sentimentality that acting is an immoral profession. But you seem like a nice, upstanding person, and if you recommend Indianapolis, well, perhaps we'll make a bit of a detour, and we might just visit Indianapolis. Thank you for the suggestion. I must say I've really enjoyed Indiana. I grew up on much further out east, and I've really enjoyed going along. There are quite a few sites here and there, and it's been quite a pleasure taking my wife and myself and our 2 children out and about, exploring the world. But we shall see what the future brings. And I do, well, it won't be too long before we must go back rehearsing again, unfortunately. But it has been a lovely discussion with so many of you folks so far. And by all means, if any of you have anything else you would like to mention, I would be more than happy to talk things over with you. Let's see. And come to think of it, I do so enjoy good old Macbeth. Good old Shakespeare. One thing I like about Shakespeare, he has, of course, the 5 acts. Taking a play and dividing it within 5 acts, going from beginning to end. And that, too, is also very popular with the plays that are written today. So many of them are written in a 5-act structure. So we have much that we owe to folks like Mr. William Shakespeare. I'd like to think that if the bard himself were here to see our fine performance, oh, I'm sure it would make him happy indeed. Let's see. Did I go to school? Yes, I did. I did attend school, and I'm trying to remember how old I was when I began. I was quite lucky. I had a fairly good education. For those who didn't hear earlier, I was lucky enough over in Philadelphia. When I was growing up, there was a theater that was created when I was very young, and it was, I believe, one of the first theaters in this country, and I was lucky enough to be beside it. And so when I was young, my parents took me to a performance at that theater. It's located on Walnut Street, if you visit. I had the passion. I didn't understand the words. That's the thing. I didn't understand didn't understand all the words or the vocabulary yet. But I connected with those actors. And there's a certain lyricism to the sounds that come out of an actor's voice. And I was very young, and I really delved into my schooling after I had that connection. But I'm very grateful for my parents for taking me to such a theatrical production, because once I made the connection as a young man of the works of someone who, a playwright, someone who uses the powers of literature to give us the stage, well, there's a very easy connection between the theater and books that we read. And so growing up, when it was, when it was recommended that we read and grow in our love of knowledge and reading, from the good book, of course, but we're a good Episcopalian family, but also from other literary sources. That is one of my highlights of my education growing up, is really discovering a love of seeing. I don't think I've ever thought of it out loud before, but I really think that my love of theater connected to an eventual love for reading. Excellent suggestions, everyone. All right, I believe we have more questions from Mr. Mortel. If a play was written for me, what sort of starring role would I like that play to have for me? Would I prefer playing a person in history, or perhaps a great romantic hero? Well, that is an excellent question. Well, preferably both. As I mentioned, something that's getting all the wonderful praise right now is that play called The Gladiator, starring Spartacus, or at least Edwin Forrest, playing Spartacus. And so you have a combination of that. And in fact, for many of Shakespeare's plays, even for something like Merchant of Venice, which is not one of his history plays per se, at least not often categorized as such. Nonetheless, if I remember my lessons correctly, he actually took some events that Shakespeare had heard of, some events that inspired him to write that play. And I suppose I'm getting my goodness, for an actor, I'm certainly tying up my own tongue, aren't I? I do apologize if I have not answered your question thoroughly, but it is an excellent question. I would like to say that if the role is dramatic enough, I would love to play it. And there is no shortage of dramatic people throughout history. Another actor. Have I ever met any of the actors who inspired me? Not in person. I was able to see Mr. Forrest. This was some years ago, I suppose. But not as an actor, but as a fellow in the audience. So for his acting style, of course, as I mentioned before, he's very big, and he's very robust, and he's very big into, as I showed some of you folks before, using physical gestures to really present his physicality. I'm not sure if it's true, but I've heard he is a very muscular man. I've heard that even as part of his costume, even adds muscles to himself, calf muscles, for example. But I have seen him on stage. And something that helps inspire me as an actor. I did read somewhere, assuming it's true, of course, but I did read that Mr. Forrest himself was inspired by other actors that he saw as a member of the audience. I know he was inspired by Edmund Kean and someone else, possibly Junius Booth. I can't recall at the moment, but what I find fascinating about Mr. Forrest is that he saw what the other actors were able to do. As an audience member, he sort of internalized the acting lessons that he saw. I know one of the actors that he took inspiration from was very big into dramatic passion on the stage, a lot of very intense emotions. So he kind of took that, but combined it with his own sense of physicality on stage. Long story short, and I do ramble, and you people are very patient and wonderful to talk to. I would like to say that as an actor myself, knowing that one of the actors that I aspire to be more like, Mr. Forrest, knowing that his process is similar to mine, that he sometimes sits in an audience and sees a wonderful acting job and then takes it in and then wonders how he can take that and create his own unique perspective on that. It made me very happy great minds think alike and all that. Oh, these are wonderful questions. And, all right, and I do believe, this is just about time, unfortunately. I must be meeting up with my wife, Serafina. We're just about to resume our rehearsal for the grand play tonight. And remember, it will be Macbeth at the Golden Eagle Inn. I do so hope to see some of you there. And I must get going and learn... did I say learn my lines? I mean... ensure and confirm that... of course I have these lines memorized. Well, in any case, it's been a pleasure talking to you, but I'm afraid I must go and begin those rehearsals. And I will see you soon, and I do so hope I see you folks soon in Prairie Town. Take care, everyone. A pleasure talking to all of you.